Thank you so much. As you must be aware, Harmony Advanced Diagnostic Centre is one of the subsidiaries of Harmony Holdings. Harmony Holdings being the investment management vehicle of the Kwara State government. And then sadly, the centre has been operating below its operational capacity and unable to fulfill the expectations of the teeming population of Kwarans who look up to the centre as the go-to diagnostic centre of choice. This is largely due to the fact that so many of the equipment that provide the services in the radiology department and of course in the laboratory department have been down for quite some time, for numerous reasons that are not unconnected with the historical and foundational challenges that the center had encountered right from the time that it was conceived. However, today we're happy to unveil the new sets of laboratory equipment that His Excellency Malam AbdulRazaq, having approved the turnaround management process of the Harmony Advanced Diagnostic Centre. We have been able to carry out a holistic rehabilitation, revamping, turnaround of the systems, and of course the resuscitation of most of the equipment. Unfortunately, considering the fact that as at the time that the center was established, like we always say all the time, under the administration of Malam AbdulRazaq, no stone is left unturned in exercising the responsibility that is expected of the state government over every state-owned asset. It is no gainsaying that it was the colossal resources and the collective patrimony of Kwarans in billions that was put into the establishment of the center. Unfortunately, right from the time that this administration came into office, the center had been a shadow of itself. When you go back to May 2019, when His Excellency was just settling down into office, the very first report that he received as to the state of affairs of the Harmony Advanced Diagnostic Centre is to the fact that most of the equipment in the radiology department were down. They were not functioning. Reason being that the service contracts that were signed with GE, the manufacturers, and the service providers were not met up with. There were owings to the tune of about 10 million naira, which were accrued management contract fees from a period, I think, between 2017 and in 2019. So about 10 million naira His Excellency had to pay, and then of course he paid for a full system assessment and then the rehabilitation of those equipment in 2019. And that basically was why the center was up and running. Like I showed you in the laboratory earlier on, when his intervention train moved into the laboratory, you realized that some of the equipment that were supposed to be performing the critical functions of the laboratory were out and were irredeemable. His Excellency approved resources for the purchase of a brand new hematology analyzer. Now, that early intervention was the reason why we had an HADC that we could run even from 2019 up until much later in 2021, towards the tail end of 2021, when we had a downtime. So back to the question that you asked, that downtime had actually eroded service availability. You would realize that in the news, a lot of people have been complaining as to the fact that they have come to the center many times in search of one service delivery or the other, and the services were simply not available. But as of today, I'm glad to say to you that in addition to the ongoing resuscitation of all the existing equipment, His Excellency being a very proactive administrator who understands the fact that you don't run a system on just one closed system equipment susceptible to breakdowns that require very huge sums of money for maintenance, that is hinged on the monopoly of just one service provider, and you rely entirely on that for the purpose of serving Kwarans. Now, he has said his watchword is that HADC needs to be up and running 24/7, providing essential services to Kwarans at an affordable cost. But beyond that, he wants a situation whereby Kwarans can have the confidence that our resources, which was sunk into the establishment of this center, is not a misplaced priority. And then this is not the very first time that he is doing that. Like I was telling you that in May 2019, at about the same time he was carrying out that intervention here, which was almost, like a failed project. It was trying to reactivate. That was the same time that it was also negotiating with the contractors who were in charge of the abandoned state secretariat. He said a lot of money of Quarrens had gone into this. We cannot abandon it. And then he had ensured that that is being completed. It was about the same time that the Elisha, the Guanara, road, which was negotiated under the last administration, abandoned, that he got that fixed too. So, bottom line is, today we have come to wake up the proverbial sleeping giant. This investment means so much to Quarrens, and His Excellency being the custodian of the resources of Quarrens and the master servant, the chief servant of the people of Kwara, who has a responsibility to ensure that everything they own works for them, has been having sleepless nights over this project. But we're happy to say that today is a moment of joy for us, because we have announced 100% service availability for the laboratory department, which means that for every critical essential equipment, we have more than one machine carrying out those critical services. So gone are the days when we would have this kind of downtime. It's no longer a situation that by the grace of God will happen. Back to the radiology department, like we took a tour, I'm happy to announce to you that following the turnaround management and the full system audit and then the revamping exercise as carried out by GE, which of course would not have been possible if His Excellency had not been magnanimous enough to approve resources which were required. Having paid, GE has come around to carry out the first round of the revamping exercise. I'm happy to announce that the CT scan machine is fully functional now and it is up and running. Patients have already been coming in and they are being served. So we encourage, the teeming public to believe in the fact that the sleeping giant is awake now. And then we're more than ready to provide all of the services that you expect to get here in HADC. I'm happy to inform you that the mammography equipment, a sophisticated one at that, has also been revamped. It is up and running now. We're still battling with the X-ray machine and the ultrasound machine that carries out echo procedures. We're expecting the last team of engineers who will be carrying out the last resuscitation exercise. However, approval has also been obtained to source for backup equipment for those critical machines too. So I can assure you that in a little above 1 week, by the grace of God, the center would have taken delivery of some backup equipment in the radiology department, particularly the X-ray machine, the ultrasound machine, an advanced version with sophisticated imaging and resolution that can carry out, echo procedures. And then of course, discussions are ongoing. Depending on what happens at the end of the final check of the MRI machine, there might be the possibility that a new MRI machine will be brought into the center. In addition to all of this, a lot of organizational restructuring has happened. When you look around the entire center, we're carrying out one of the most massive facelift and renovation exercise. It's like the biggest that has happened since this center was established. This is meant to restore confidence and to create a very conducive environment. Healthcare is, and healthcare service delivery is not something that you can treat with the hands of levity. And Madam AbdulRazaq, being someone who is quite concerned about the well-being of the people, the healthcare sector is actually one of the core areas that he has not left any stone unturned in working towards its transformation. Look at what is happening in the healthcare sector. We're having a lot of pioneering efforts where you find out, they tell you this facility is a first in North Central Nigeria and the only place you have it is in Kwara. Many of that is happening across board. If you look at some of the facilities that are coming up right now, even in the University of Ilorin Teaching Hospital, most of them are the most sophisticated in terms of advanced care, for patients, and they are all coming on board under the administration of Madam AbdulRazaq. Finally, we would want to use this medium to correct the negative impression that some members of the opposition had attempted, to create on this center. Three things. Quarrens would have been surprised and they were wondering. A lot of people have called us and they're like, over time HADC has been the subject of the discussion of numerous opposition programs on radio. And then they throw banters, they speak with a lot of relish, a lot of happiness as to the fact that the center was down And then, you know, in their own opinion, which of course is a short-sighted opinion, they believe that when an essential service delivering institution is unable to provide the services to Kwarans, and Kwarans are suffering as a result of that inability to provide those services, they see it as a moment of happiness. They relish at every point in time when they feel that Kwarans are deprived of anything, because the only thing they understand about governance and politics is like a game of, you know, competition. The adversity of the people for them is a plus to them. This is a very narrow, you know, very selfish, very self-centered, very primordial and pedestrian approach to looking at governance. Governance basically is about providing essential services to the people. Now, the reason why we did not respond at that point in time, and the responses are quite simple. Number one, if this institution were to have been established under this administration, the multi-billion naira that was sunk into this institution, more than half of it that was wasted in the wrong procurement processes that were shrouded in secrecy, many of which did not go through any public procurement processes, and for which up until this moment you can still find that the cases are in the courts, because of course there were cases that went very bad. If it were to have happened under this administration, you can be sure that it would have happened for less than half of the amount of money that they had spent, and the balance would have been, and then the quality of the work would have been far better than what you have around here, and the balance would also have been deployed to touching the lives of the people, especially in the grassroots. But what did we get here? The bulk of this equipment that the opposition party was rejoicing had gone down at that time. They were supplied here when they were all aged machines. Many of them had passed their useful life even before they supplied them here under the cover and the disguise of the fact that they were new equipment bought with billions of the collective patrimony of Kwarans. So many of this equipment never worked from the moment they were supplied in this center. The few that worked are equipment that are closed systems that ties you to a monopolistic maintenance system of the manufacturers. And then you find out that the bulk of what you even earn in here is not sufficient to maintain the equipment. If the last administration speaks to their economic and financial ingenuity in setting up businesses, setting up institutions, setting up service delivery centers, you know, that would serve the people of Kwara, they should have known very well that even the choice of equipment that they had bought into this place are not the choice of equipment that you require for a market-facing, private sector-oriented medical diagnostic institution. Secondly, how do organizations operate in their life cycle? In the early days of an organization, when your revenue generating mechanism is at its best, those are the days of plenty. It is in those days that you eat a bit of what you're getting and then you save for the raining days. But what did the last administration do in the days when all of these equipment were in their midlife cycles and they were still functioning at least at reasonable capacity? They brought in an unknown Medicube management company whom they said were consultants of international standards. They were the ones that handed over this brand, the newly constructed center to, that was built with billions. And they ran it for a period above 3 years. And for the 3 years that they ran it, they were only earning huge sums of money in management fees that even the Kwara State government never earned. And after 3 years, when they had run the center aground, the bulk of the equipment could no longer provide the kind of services required to keep the center running. They turned in their resignations and they went into the blues. And so when somebody says to me that why is this happening under this administration, because under the previous administration they had a management contract approach, we say to them, we understand those kind of management consultants. All management consultants that come in and rather than adding value to systems, they wreck the systems and they only make them conduit pipe via which they take away the revenue that those systems generate. No profit, even for 1 kobo, was generated and turned into the Kwara State government who invested in this asset. And then when you look at issues like affordability parameters, Kwarans will tell you 2 things. This center does not belong to us. They will tell you at that time, before the coming of Madam AbdulRazaq, that the center belonged to one high-profile individual, a former governor of the state. And why will they believe that? Because in its management, they don't see Kwarans. In its functionality, they do not see the touch of Quarans in it. You know, some briefcase management contractors were brought from Lagos. They landed here and they ran the place like a fiefdom, earning huge sums that citizens who are experts in their rights did not earn here. They earned fees that the state government did not get as returns on investment. And the moment they grounded it into the thin air, nobody questioned them. There was no account of stewardship. And if somebody says that, no, I mean, that one was a mistake, they didn't plan it to be so, we understand that kind of mistake. The same kind of mistake that put Kwara Hotel in the hands of some, unknown, unscrupulous elements that they packaged in as management contractors almost immediately after late Governor Alabilawal revamped and renovated the whole of that hotel. And what happened? They put it in the hands of those, whether South Africans or Zimbabweans. A lot of Kwarans don't even know their identities. And then they came in here and they ran that hotel aground. They took a loan of 350 million with the hotel. They made huge sums of money and they took everything away. So if somebody has said that even Kwara Hotel at that time did not belong to Kwara State, it belonged to an individual, they were right. Because even if the individual did not take the hotel in terms of its physical asset, all of the value that were being generated, both from Harmony Advanced Diagnostic at that time, Kwara Hotel, and then of course you don't want us to talk about the lengthy tail of Kwara Mall Development Company, which is a ShopRite company that was operated also for 10 years now, and in each year they made nothing less than 500 million naira, and up until today they have not finished servicing the 2 billion naira loan that they took. Where are these monies going to? These are the kind of questions that Kwarans are supposed to be asking. So, but as of today, what we have done differently is to say, even when the focus, when this was established, was a public procurement, the billions that went into sourcing for this equipment from, very, very, very highly unregistered sources. Because if they had a direct contract with GE, the equipment would have come in with better service level agreements. But as of today, you find us just tied to the apron string of those people at their mercy. And then this is a short end of the stick that Kwarans are getting. But having said all of this, and like I said, what Malam AbdulRazaq and his new era administration, the Otoge response stands for, is to say that all dry bones shall rise in Kwara. Everything that had gone down, everything that was done wrongly, we will not leave them to continue to be bad. We will take responsibility for them. We will put in resources into them. We will apply management ingenuity into them. We will ensure that our approach is sustainable, long-lasting, and that can bring about the maximum value to the people of Kwara. So that exactly is what we have come here to do again. And I can assure you that by the 1st of October, God's willing, the lab has been activated 100% from this moment henceforth. Everything about the laboratory is good to go. The radiology section is 50% up and running now. And in about a little above 1 week, like I had earlier on informed you, we will be able to also provide 100% service availability, which will mean that the center will be back to the state it should have been as at the time it was established, but even better. Because in the areas where we had just one equipment, efforts are ongoing to make them two. In the areas where we were tied to the apron string of just a closed system equipment manufacturer, we're also providing open systems as backups. And then in the areas where we were operating only within the confines of this building, right now we're going to be having satellite centers where we can provide better services to Kwarans. And finally, in the area where it was just all business and there were no affordability parameters, under this administration, starting with the 25% discount that we're giving to Kwarans, starting from tomorrow for all laboratory procedures, as a way of saying that we are sorry, we take responsibility for all that had happened within the period in which this center was down and not running. Unfortunately, it was as a result of the challenges that we inherited from the administrative responsibility of the previous era. However, we have taken responsibility, and as of today, we're happy to say to you that it has been fixed. You have your center back now, and then affordability parameters will be the next thing that we'll be looking into. The affordability parameters basically is to say that this center was used to set it up. We will run as a commercial enterprise so that we don't have to go cap in hand to the Kwara State government all the time. However, even within the threshold of our profit, we'll give some back to the people so that they can feel truly that both physically and in terms of its functionality, Harmony Advanced Diagnostic Centre belongs to the good people of Kwara. We urge you to continue to support this institution. Let's have a restored confidence in your mind, and let's have all of the patronage. And our doors are opened. And the management system the management on the ground right now has been revamped. And then one of the things that they would really require from the people of Kwara will be your observations, your suggestions, and then even if you need to criticize any of the things that we're doing, you can be sure that we're here for you. Bring them in, we'll work on them in order to ensure that we can fix the system better and serve you optimally. Thank you. God bless you.
Yes, I was commenting for the job well done.
Thank you.
But why would be asking how much, what is the percentage of what you just did?
Well, basically, the efforts that we have carried out are in batches, but I can say to you that the total turnaround management that is being carried out in this place, in addition to the fact that a backlog of salaries that were unpaid in the era when the center was, down in cash flow, was also approved by His Excellency, and they have all been paid to the last kobo. I can assure you that everything that we're doing, even in addition to the equipment that we're expecting in the radiology section, is far below 100 million, far below it. And then you want to put that side by side with the over 3 or 4 billion that was spent. I mean, as of today, I can tell you the price of all of this equipment brand new. And I know the prices that I saw when we set up the BOTAD, panel on investigation to investigate the cost with which the center was built. I can tell you that the least value of markup would be about 500%. And then, Kwarans would not have been concerned. And for me, I would not have broken my head over it if what we got is something that works. But you give us something that was dead on arrival, something that appears as though it was set up to fail, consistently at every point in time. When you're fixing one problem, another problem is coming your way. So even if you want to know the reason why we have decided to go for this open source equipment, is because we want to break away from the bad history. Because you find out that what we do in Harmony Holdings every day is solving the problem of the past. Yoruba people will say, a son who did not inherit anything that makes sense, and then your father has now gone to borrow money from everybody. So they don't come to tell you that Baba re o kole kale, Baba re nile kale. They are coming to tell you Baba re yawo, Baba re paya, Baba re gba yawo yan, Baba re o bamato yan je, Baba re kolu eleyin. So you want to wonder, Baba wo niye? That's not a good ancestor for Kwarans. So the idea that we're even going for open source systems today is to break away from that history. And I tell you, very soon, we will invite you. All of this equipment that you are seeing on the ground, because they will come and they will say, look, they have gone, they are walking around our center. The bulk of those equipment are equipment that the world has ditched. If this center was run the way it ought to be run, they ought to have had asset replacement saving schemes. A fund needed to have been set aside when they were making profit. It is called a sinking fund. It's not rocket science, but it is not a tea party. Not everybody can understand. But you see, when there's too much political interference, when there's too much, intent to shortchange the people, you certainly cannot get the economics right. So one of the things that we are going to be empaneling from this moment going forward, the moment the center begins to operate at full capacity, is from day one, there's going to be a sinking fund. We're going to start saving for the asset replacement, because very soon the ideal thing for us to do will be to phase out all of the old stock and bring in the new stock, higher versions with better sophistication.
Thank you so much. On behalf of Just Mental, I commend your efforts and question will be arise and show it to you.
Thank you so much. Yes, we will take it. Speak to the CEO.